Hello, I am very excited to show off version 5. This thing has been in development for years, and I think it's probably the largest software release we've had in our 17, 18-year company history. The biggest feature in version 5 is data sets, but there's even if data sets weren't in there, there's a completely new chart writer, a completely new report writer. There's a metric approval queue. There's all kinds of enhancements with mass edit. This would be a major release even without data sets. So let's launch right into the software. The idea behind data sets is in the past, there's been two different types of things our software tracks at its very base level. One is KPIs, measures, metrics, whatever you want to call them. The idea is you pick something that's important to you, you set a goal, and you measure it over and over and over again. That is the heart of Spider Impact. It's been what we built our company around. And then there's initiatives. If one of your measures or a higher level objective isn't performing well, you put this initiative in place. There's a start date and an end date, and you measure what percent complete it is, and you measure how much money you've spent, and our software will predict whether you're going to be on time and under budget. So that has been the bread and butter of Spider Impact since the very beginning. With the release of Impact 5, we're introducing a new type of data that can be collected. We're calling it data sets, and it's unstructured data. It's an entire business intelligence layer that sits underneath all of the existing functionality. And so let's dive into that right now. Here's an example spreadsheet I've got. It's device sales for a fictitious company. There's a customer information, there's sales date, sales price, sales employee, that kind of stuff, right? And so we are going to go to the brand new data set section in the app. Data sets are stored by organization, just like scorecards or dashboards. We're going to choose Mobile World Incorporated example, and I'm going to create a new data set. And I'm going to call this sales test or something, right? And it tracks sales. Data sets can pull the data from spreadsheets and databases like you see here. You can pull it in automatically from Google Sheets. If you have an FTP site set up, you can pull in a schedule every night or every week or every month or whatever, a spreadsheet on a remote server. The idea is it's structured data in a table just like I showed you in that spreadsheet. So you go to next, and then you pick which file you want. I've got a file here on my desktop that I just showed you. This is that device sales spreadsheet. In this particular example, there's 20,000, 30,000 some odd records. Data sets goes up to several 100,000 records, even up to 1 million if you don't have a lot of data. So we pick, this is our header column. Choose next. You can add transformations, so you can say, take this column, combine it with this column, and that's going to be your date. Or don't import records after a certain date or before a certain date. All of the data transformations that were released in version 4 are also applied to data sets in addition to KPIs or initiatives. And then we say, does it map the fields correctly? Sales price, that's a currency. Sales date, it's a data. It's pretty good at guessing what data types your data is. And we hit done. And then Spider Impact spends a couple of minutes aggregating all the data, getting it ready to be used in Spider Impact. Now this is going to be like a cooking show. I'm going to pull the completed cake out of the oven right now. And we're going to go to device sales over here, which is the exact same spreadsheet that's already uploaded. I've linked it together with this other customer's data set, but we're going to keep it simple and just look at device sales. So here's the records tab. These are the exact same records we looked at before, right? There's 31,000 of them. And you can just scroll through and see them all. But where the real action happens is on the Explore tab. In the Dataset section, this is for Ad Hoc Analysis. This is where if I want to answer a question about my data, I can go and with a few clicks get some answers. So the first step is choosing a field. What field do I want to see? Well, let's do sales employee. And out of the 31,000 sales, Isaac is responsible for 19% of them, which is 6,000. Odell has 17%, and Holly's in third. If you want to add another field, we'll choose country. And we see about half of our sales were to the United States, a quarter UK, and then the other quarter is split between Australia and Canada. If you want to filter by any records, you just click on them. In this situation, I'm clicking on United Kingdom. And now it's going to update the totals for everything. There's 7,000 sales to the UK, and these are the numbers broken down by salesperson for the UK. And you can apply multiple filters. Here's just United Kingdom and Holly, right? And there's a bunch of different types of data analysis you can do, but that's the general idea of the Explore tab. You choose which fields you care about, and then you click on the values to filter on them. And that is 90% of what you're going to do in the Datasets Explore section. Now, datasets are not, the Explore section is not built for reporting and showing presentations and showing this information off to everybody else. That's the dashboard section. So we'll click over there right now. We don't really want to save that. And this is the exact same data shown on a dashboard. And here's the exact same chart. There's your sales employees, there's your countries, these are totals. So we have a whole bunch of brand new widgets that work with dataset values that display your dataset value directly on your dashboard. And just like in the actual dataset section, if I want to see just Holly's numbers, I click on that and it breaks it down, and this chart automatically updates, and you can see Holly's totals broken down by country. Here's her value of sales and the number of sales. So the Datasets Explore section is great for ad hoc analysis. If you want to show presentation data, use the actual presentation sections. You can build strategy maps and dashboards, reports and charts. All that stuff you can build on top of datasets underneath. Speaking of building on top of datasets, there's one more thing I want to show you. We're over here in the datasets section, and let's explore by country again. At any point in time, I can click on any number here in one of these tables. Here's the United Kingdom, the number of sales for the United Kingdom. I'm going to click on it, and I can create a Dataset Kpi. And this ties the KPI section to the Dataset section. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to call this thing number of UK sales. And I'm going to, where did I have that? Oh, I think I had it at the bottom here under additional examples. Yeah, Dataset Kpi example. So I've got some pre-built Dataset KPIs over here I'm going to show you in just a second. And I'm going to create the number of UK sales as a Dataset KPI. And it's going to change over time by the sales date. So I'm going to hit save. And it's just created a Dataset KPI. We can click over here to check it out. So here's the number of UK sales. If I go to overview, we can see it's a Dataset KPI. It's just like any other KPI in the system, but it's goes back for years and years of data with just a couple of clicks. And every time I upload a new spreadsheet, or every time if I'm pulling my data in from a database or some other system of record, whenever that data is updated, my KPIs are going to automatically update. And I can go in and set goals for any of these things and make them scored or whatever. For example, here's Canada sales value. And this one is a goal-only KPI, and you can see Canada's scores over time. Now, at any point, if I want to know where the data comes from, I can go over here to KPI value, I mouse over it, and it says, oh yeah, that's what's going on. This number is the sales data set with customers matching Canada. And I can click on it, drill down, I can see that exact same number. Oh, okay, this is great. And I can start exploring my data again. I wanted to say show sales employee. Okay, so based on that number that I just saw, these are all broken down by sales employee. All right, so that's data sets. One more thing I want to show you is permissions. This comes up all the time with people say, well, yeah, but if I'm going to put every single one of my corporate sales, or I'm going to put data in here that I only want to share with some people, what is your permissions model for data sets? Well, there's good news on both fronts here. It's easy to use, and it gives you fine-grained control. So for example, let's go to this customers data set. By default, data sets are the identical permissions as anything else in the system. So if I am able to see this organization, and that organization has a data set in it, I can see all the records in the data set. And over here, I'm editing on the Edit tab for the customers data set permissions. Everyone who can see this organization can see this data set, and advanced permissions is off. If I flick advanced permissions on, now all of a sudden, only people who I explicitly give permission to see the data set will be able to see it, and they'll only be able to see the records that I give them access to. And let me show you what that looks like over here in device sales. So device sales I've already set up as a advanced permissions data set. There's two users here in addition to the built-in administrator. There's Jill Montgomery and Scott O'Reilly. They're both users. Now Jill Montgomery, I click on Edit for her. She does not have permission to be an administrator. She can't modify permissions or records. There's all these different things you can do to a data set that you can assign someone permission to do. She doesn't have any of those permissions. She can just look at the data. But there's a permission filter applied to her as well. She can only see records where the sales department is corporate. So let's log in as Jill and see what that means. All right, so we're here in the software as Jill. We're going to go to the datasets section. First of all, you'll notice she only has permission to see a couple of organizations. That's common. We're going to go to the Mobile World Incorporated example and click on that. And here we are at the device sales dataset. Now, notice here she has a permissions filter permanently applied. She can't delete it. Sales department is corporate. So when she chooses sales employee, she's just going to see 2 sales employees, right? Because this only shows you data for the corporate sales department. But it's not just, it just doesn't happen in the dataset section. It happens everywhere. So if I go over here to dashboards and back to that dashboard we were looking at before, she's going to see the same dashboard. This is identical. This is the dashboard that I showed you earlier, but she's going to see different data because here at the bottom, there's a filter. Sales department is corporate, permanently applied. She cannot remove it. Now, she can further filter, right? She can click on, all right, fine. In the United Kingdom, corporate sales look like this, right? But she only can see the data set records that we have explicitly given her permission to see. All right, so that's data sets. It's really promising technology. It's been in use for several years now in the US Army, and we've worked out all the kinks. It's a mature product, and it's ready to go for our commercial customers. Next, let's check out reports. So the report section is the same great report section that we've always had, where you can run the same reports that you've always been able to run, but we've completely changed the user interface for how you build reports, which adds a lot of flexibility. So let's click, here's a red measures report. It's the exact same kind of report we had before. And we'll click New Report. There are 3 different reports here that we can add. Oh, I'm still logged in as Jill. Let's log in as the administrator. Much better. All right, so there is a 3rd type of report that most folks don't have access to. I'm not even going to cover it today. It's the SQL report. If you're a high-level administrator, you can get permission to do this, and you can write SQL against the database and write whatever kind of fancy report you want. That's incredibly uncommon. 99.99% of the reports that are ever made in our software are going to be these 3: scorecards, initiatives, and data sets. So let's take a look at the scorecards report. Just like in version 4 and earlier, we have pre-made reports right out of the box. I can click Next, Next, Finish, and I can say, here's the scorecard owner and updater report, the red KPI report, etc. We're going to launch right into the advanced report designer, though, and just start out with a report showing all of the KPIs in the system. So as you can see on the top here, edit mode for our report writer only shows you 3 sample scorecard items. And that's because you don't want to trip over all the data. You just want to get a sample for what your report looks like. If you click over to the View tab, you can see, okay, here's my full report. This is literally every single KPI in the software. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of KPIs here, right? And it's showing you all in the View tab. One of the big philosophies of how we design the new report and chart writer is, rather than opening up a dialog and choosing what you want and hitting done and then seeing your results, you can directly interact with the results or with the report itself right here on the page. For example, if I want to add a column, I click the plus button here, and I can choose organization, and because these are KPIs, I'm going to choose updaters. And just like that, you say click, 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 and add whatever columns you want to your report. You can drag and drop things to reorganize them. I'm going to put organization over here. And you can change any information you want by just clicking on it. For example, if I want to change a column in a report, I can go to Edit, and I've got some options. I can set the column label. I'm going to change organization to just org. I can change formatting. So I can say I want organization to be bold, or I want it to be an extra large font, or I want it to be a dark color or a lighter color, right? You can do alignment or whatever, right? You can build the kinds of reports that you want and apply formatting to the different columns. Another thing here is set data source. You can go in and choose which column you want. With Dataset Reports, you can choose calculated columns. I'll show you that in just a second. And finally, when you're repeating by up here, we're repeating by calendar period. It's KPI value repeating by calendar period. I can click on it and I can say, all right, I actually want to see quarterly data, or I want to see 3 periods earlier to the current period. And just like that, I've extended it an additional period. If you want to add additional repeating values, here's KPI value. Let's say I also want to show the goal for every calendar period. And so now it's repeating goal and KPI value over and over and over again. You can drag and drop columns horizontally inside these repeating values, but you can also grab the columns and drag them up and down. And so now KPI value and goal are first in the grouping, and then it repeats by calendar period. So you see a calendar period for every KPI value together. Let's remove this goal. And so now we're just showing the KPI value up here. If you don't want to show a particular header, for example, if there's just a single value up there and it's not adding anything, you can say hide this header and go over to view. And so now, instead of saying KPI value underneath every single column, it's going to show you just the column headers because it's understood that this is the KPI value. Finally, you can group. So, you can sort fields too, A to Z or Z to A, or based on your column. But we're not going to sort this field. Instead, we're going to group. So this is the organization, and we're flipping the group toggle. And so what this does is it pulls out the organization and puts all of the matching records underneath. So this is a report grouped by organization. This is Mobile World Incorporated example. Here's its 2 KPIs. Here's my financial KPIs. Here's my customer support KPIs, that kind of stuff. So grouping is incredibly powerful in Spider Impact Report Writer. OK, so that shows you how things work for scorecards. It's the exact same kind of story for initiatives. So in the past with initiatives, we had an initiatives report, but you couldn't customize its display at all. You just selected some parameters and it spit out the initiatives report. Well, now the flow for editing initiatives is exactly the same as all other reports in the software. It's just that for initiatives, there's different columns, right? So I'm going to choose the budget remaining column. I want to add budget remaining. And so now I can see the latest values. Now, as you notice here, with initiatives, there is no forced repeating calendar period column because it just shows you the latest data. If you don't see a calendar period on the top, it knows that $2,500 under budget is my current value for migrate servers to the cloud. But you can repeat by calendar period if you want. It's optional. And what that will do is it will show you the historic performance of these initiatives. So I'm going to repeat by calendar period. And you can see here, the Build Search Engine Optimization Capability Initiative was 11K under budget in July, and then it was 29K or 11K over, 29K over, and then 61K under budget. So repeating columns for calendar periods is optional for initiatives. Finally, let's take a look at Dataset Reports. This is probably the most powerful. So with Dataset Reports, you choose which dataset you want to build a report on, and you hit Create Report. And you'll notice there are no starting columns. And that's because with scorecards and initiatives, it's very prescriptive. There's a scorecard name and an organization and whatever, and we can pick what people are going to want to see most of the time. For datasets, it's completely open-ended. We don't know what people's datasets are going to look like, so there's no way we can choose what columns to throw on the report. But the good news is report columns are just as easy to add for datasets. So let's add some information about sales, right? Here's customer name. We're going to do the point of contact email. We're building up a report showing all of the sales. Point of contact phone number. Let's do a sale date, sale price, and I think employee will be the last I'm going to add. OK, great. So now we've got our report. And again, I can go over here to view. And remember, there's 30 some odd thousand of these records, and sure enough, you can just scroll down all day long and see you see my little scroll bar getting longer or shorter and shorter as I scroll down and see all these results. All right, let's go back to the Edit tab and start slicing and dicing this data set data. So we're going to sort by salesperson, or group rather, I mean. And so we're going to group by salesperson. And so now it's going to show all sales for each individual salesperson. And again, there's going to be thousands of sales under each one of these salespeople. But when you're grouping by something, there's a toggle here that's called Show Individual Records. And I can turn that off. And so I will no longer show these individual records underneath Isaac Bernhard. These columns are going to stick around, and it's going to show aggregated data for whatever you're grouping on. Let's see what happens. So this is the report now. A lot fewer records, right? Just one row for every sales employee. And it's going to show you aggregated data based on the columns I chose. Now, these are not super helpful, right? I could have chosen better columns, but there are 220 unique customer names. So, in all of Russell's data that he sold to 220 unique customers. Makes sense. Same thing with this unique point of contact email. There's 220. And this phone number, right? It's going to be the same customer information. But here's unique sale date. Why are there 7 extra records? Well, it's because Russell sold to the same employee, the same customer, 7 different times. So there were a couple of customers where there were multiple sale dates for the exact same customer. All right, well, let's delete that too. So we now have an incredibly simple report, just showing 2 columns, right? This is the sales employee and how much software or whatever it is that they sold over time. You can take this sales price sum and you can repeat by. In KPIs, it was required. For initiatives, it was optional. For data sets, it's also optional. Now, I could choose to repeat by sale date. So it would show for every sales employee 3 months worth of their sales. And I could repeat by that. But data sets is wide open as far as what kind of data it can show and how you slice and dice. And so we are actually going to choose country. And so now it's repeating sales employee for, or repeating sales totals for every country broken down. And remember that trick we had before where we drag this to the top and we hide it? We don't want that sales price sum. So we can go over here to this view report and we can see the sales employee, what their total sales were for every country. And we can repeat again if we want. Let's say we actually do want to repeat by date, right? So I'm going to hide this header, bring this guy down, and let's repeat this thing again by sale date. And we're going to hide this guy again. Look at this. We've got a beautiful report broken down twice where it's every single sales employee, it's sales for every single country for 3 months. And so that's the kind of power and flexibility that the new report designer has in Spider Impact. Okay, let's go over to dashboards. Dashboards has all kinds of great, exciting new things that you can do here. So we'll create a new dashboard. Call this thing test. And the first thing you'll notice is there is a brand new Add Widget menu. We've reorganized this thing. We've made it look better. We've added new widget types. It's functional now, sorted based on what the types of widgets do. So these are the general widgets that don't have any specific type of formatting to them. These are specific scorecard widgets. These are initiative widgets. These are the data set widgets. We've seen these in action, right? It's a filter widget, a data set single value, and a table. And then we now have charts and reports at their own row at the bottom here. Let's add an existing report. And we'll add, I don't know if I saved my report. This might have been one I made earlier. Oh yeah, it's whatever. It's a simple report. So what I did here is I just added a report to the dashboard, and this is sales for every employee and showing different totals, right? But what's nice in version 5 now is, yes, it copied that report from the report section and stuck it into my dashboard, but it's just a copy of that, and I can edit it directly right here on the dashboard. Here's the report, right? And you can add the columns directly here, and everything's good to go. So all of the reports and charts you can now edit directly on your dashboard rather than having to go back to the reports or dashboard section or reports or chart section, make your modifications, and then copy it over. So that is dashboards. Charts are similar. You can add a new chart here. And there is a big menu of all the chart options. Again, we've changed our philosophy about how we want to build charts in Spider Impact 5. We had a lot of great functionality before, but it was all kind of hidden behind different menus, and you had to kind of discover as you were going along what your options are. Now we have a beautiful menu laid out with just everything you could possibly create. So here's bar charts, line charts, scorecard item charts where you have different threshold bands in the background. You've got advanced charts here where you can have stacked bar, stacked area, combo charts where you mix and match. There's trend lines and forecasting. I'll show you that in just a second. And finally, there's 8 beautiful new diagram infographic style charts that you can add to your dashboards. You can play with them in the chart section, but they're really great for visualizing your data. When you have a chart that you want to add from the menu, let's say I want to do line and stacked bar. That looks good. It does placeholder data, and I'll get into how to build charts here in just a second, but the general idea is these aren't powered by real data at all. It's just putting random data in here that looks good. And the reason why that you can do that is you can add charts and reports to your dashboards without having to do all the data cleanup and figuring out exactly what data is there. So you can visually lay things out and then say, okay, this is exactly what I want to show. Now I'm going to actually wire up these charts to show my real performance data. It's a great time saver. It's starting at the end state and then plugging in the real data later. So with all that being said, let's go to the chart section and see all this in action. So here's charts like you would see before. One of the first things you'll notice is charts is a brand new section in Spider Impact 5. It's got a completely different user interface than charts now, or than reports, and so charts and reports are split into separate sections. Let's create a new chart. We're just going to do a blank one. And these are the 4 different panels you see when you're creating your chart. This is the left axis, repeating, right axis, and other. It's generic chart configuration. So let's go to the left axis and we'll add data. We're going to add a data series for a scorecard item. And let's just start adding bars for perspectives. And just like that, we've added 3 series to my charts. Really quickly, this is my real data. These are the 3 of the 4 balanced scorecard perspectives are on a chart right now. You can drag and drop these things. So if I want to move internal processes somewhere else, the internal processes chart drags to the far right. I'm going to add another data series. Let's make this one a line so it looks different. Another scorecard item, but instead of being a scorecard item, I'm going to add an actual KPI. And what this is doing, it's completely blowing out the scale because these scores are down here all under 10, and then my product revenue is way up in the 400,000, right? So this is just screaming for a different axis. I'm going to grab product revenue, I'm going to drag it over here to the right axis. Now, this looks much better, right? I can see product revenue is on the right axis, and then those scored things are on the left axis. This middle panel here is repeat. Just like in reports, I'm repeating these 3 data series by calendar period. So let's get rid of product revenue. I'm repeating by calendar period. So let's edit this range. And I'm going to say, I'm going to show 4 periods earlier, right? And so now I show 4 periods of data. Repeating data series is the same kind of thing as editing columns in your report. Finally, there is this Add Analytics box. You know how we had that menu where it's all your pre-made reports? There's now Add Analytics with a pre-made menu of different types of things you can add to your report. So I can put scoring bands on there. I can do maximum line, average line, area stacks, bar stacks. These are a trend line, right? A lot of different types of things you can add to the chart. I'm going to add an average line. Actually, no, I'm going to add a trend line. This is kind of interesting. So I'm going to hit trend line. And I'm going to make that trend line green. And I'm going to bump up the opacity Make that thing awfully thick, right? So now I've got a green trend line, and it's showing trend data for all the data series. In Spider Impact 5, you don't have to choose which series you want to show your trend line for. You can have multiple series. So I'm going to go here to the trend line. I'm going to go to data source. The source data series is all, but let's say I want to do financial. So now this trend line is just going to show the trend for the financial perspective, which is kind of neat. And here's another thing you can do with trend lines. You can show fills. So it's going to show a blue fill underneath. And remember I talked about dragging and dropping to change the order? It also changes the depth order as well. So I'm going to take this trend line and I'm going to drag it all the way at the bottom. And now it's behind all the other lines. So a lot of great new types of analytic objects that you can add to the dashboard, like these trend lines. So let's show another type of report. I'm going to save this one. We might come back to that. I'll do another blank one. Let's see what it looks like to create a data set report. So we're going to add data. I'm going to add a bar data set. We'll do the same device sales that we've been playing with. And I'm going to do sale price. So this is a big old fat bar representing the $31 million of sales we've ever had. Just a single bar on the series. But you can repeat it by anything. Again, just like in reports, I can repeat by time. I can repeat by sales date, but I don't have to. I'm going to repeat by sales employee. And it breaks that big bar into a whole bunch of little bars representing each employee. And I can repeat again. This time, instead of doing it by date, I'm going to break it down by country. So now we have every single sales employee for every single country broken down. All right, let's show one more analytics item. Let's do the average line. So I'm going to click average. And it adds a reference lines and bands object. It's a pre-built object showing the average. And it's going to show you the average across for the entire chart. Looking good, but there's something called scope that we can change. I'm going to say, instead of drawing a line for the entire chart, make the scope every country. So now the reference line is going to be the average for every country. And the reference lines and bands, you could add multiple lines. So I'm going to add a new one. And you can do constant number, or aggregated chart value, or whatever. Let's keep it simple. And let's do, is that the right, I think one more zero. Let's see if that looks good. Perfect. It's drawing a constant line at 2.5 million, and it's drawing another line at the average for the country. And then we can add a fill between the two. And now all of a sudden, we have ourselves a reference band. And I don't know exactly what performance this would show, but we'll probably take this up to the top. And then you can draw reference lines on your chart. You can make the lines show goals. You can make the lines show thresholds in the background. Here is the Add Analytics, where you can draw dark and light scoring bands. That's just a reference lines and bands object, right? But instead of drawing the lines at an aggregated total, it's going to draw a line at your goal or a line at your red flag and then fill in the gap with colors between. One last thing I want to show you on charts. Let's go back to add clicks. Every single line chart has this new toggle on it called forecast. And with a flip of a toggle, you can now forecast data using real, academically published forecasting algorithms. So this is a KPI that's auto-generated by random data on the server, and so it's going to have a pretty darn wide confidence interval. The confidence interval by default is 95%. It's saying there's a 95% chance that in the coming months you're going to fall within this range. And as you go forward, you can extend. I can extend the range into the future, and the confidence interval is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. But let's look at what some real data looks like as far as this. Oh, before I get into that though, if you are into statistics, you can set your forecast model. By default, it's auto, but you can choose auto without seasonality. You can do custom. You can, all kinds of different things. You can change the auto calculated algorithm, but vast majority of the time, flipping that auto switch is going to give you a really great prediction. So let's go back over here to the dashboard section. and I will show you some forecasting examples. So this is the kind of data that's auto-generated from our software is going to be this kind of thing, right? It's going to be up and down, but there's no trend detected, but the confidence interval is going to be narrow or wide based on historical data. Positive trend looks like this. This is data where it's, it's up and down, but it is in generally the algorithm's catching it going up. And this is seasonal trend. This is really interesting. It caught this. Again, this is all on auto. These are quarters where each quarter is similar to the quarter in the previous year. And in general, it's saying, yep, we're going up and it's quarterly. And that confidence interval is really, really tight based on this seasonal data. And it's going up and zigzagging for every quarter. So that is charts. The very last thing I want to show you is the scorecard section. There's two things. First of all, we've moved mass edit to administration. So the reason behind this is mass edit used to be in the scorecard or in the report section, but we've rewritten reports and it wasn't a great fit before. Now it just doesn't even make sense at all in reports. So it's now a section here. And so for example, let's say owners. I want to assign owners. And let's do a filter, specific scorecard items. I'm going to assign owners to this balanced scorecard. Oh, I didn't select it. And I can click specific items. No, I'm going to click the whole thing. I'm going to edit them all. I'm going to assign Scott O'Reilly as the owners. Hit save. And it says here, great, I've edited 19 scorecard items. Scott O'Reilly is now an owner for a bunch of stuff in that organization. Great. Very, very last thing I want to show you. There is a setting under administration, under application administration. It's off by default, but require owner approval for KPI value updates. The idea behind this is whenever you update a KPI value, it will put it into a queue. It'll send an alert to that item's owner, and that owner needs to approve the KPI value before it shows up in the software. Let me show you how that works. So we're going to log in as Jill. And we've logged in as her before. Let's go to her update KPIs. And she's the updater for a whole bunch of stuff. So let's say she's changing this value and 72% and 25 and 3.6, whatever. There's 4 of them. So we're going to hit update KPIs. Now what happens here is it's going to put a blue background here. Some KPI values have not yet been approved. They're indicated in blue. So here's product revenue. The value that's pending is 440,000. Let's click into the software, and you see here it's still at 441,000. No one has any idea that this thing's queued up because it hasn't been approved, right? Someone could enter nonsense data in there. So things are going great, but if you ever try to update them, it's still lit up in blue. Explains why it's lit up in blue, and it's got that new pending value. Okay, great. So we're over here. Let's log in as Scott. And I've got an alert. What are my alerts? These are from testing earlier. I've got KPI values that are pending approval. Great. So let's go over here. Here's my KPIs that Jill suggested to me. Oh gosh, yeah, product revenue, that's a good number, that's a good number. No, I can click all and hit save. But actually, the number of CVs, I think that's incorrect. I'm going to reject that number. So I hit save, and I'm good to go. Now back to Jill. Jill has an alert too. And she says, oh my gosh, that value is rejected by Scott O'Reilly. And so that is the KPI approval process queue. It's going to be really helpful for companies that really like to have it locked down on what values make it in and out of the software. So that is it. We're very excited for you to get your hands on this software. And back to you, Dee.